This conference will now be recorded.
Related to the oncology. So one is endometrial cancer and obesity, and another talk is HRT in gynecological malignancies. HRT after gynecological malignancies. Actually, these both talks are important only from the number point of views. Okay, you will get this number questions from this talk, I think, and definitely you can get it in your exam. Remember it. Okay. So we will start with this talk, endometrial cancer and obesity. So endometrial cancer is the most common gynecological cancer in the UK, and we all know endometrial cancer is mostly because it is the risk factor. Major risk factor for endometrial cancer is obesity, and it is shown that every 5 BMI of increase in BMI increase of 5, it is linked to 60% increase in endometrial cancer link. So every 5 kilogram per meter square increase in BMI, it is linked to 60% increase in endometrial cancer. So a woman with BMI of 40 or more, she has a risk of 10 times more to have endometrial cancer, and it gives her lifetime risk of 10 to 15%. So this is a SBA from the strategy, okay, from the TOG SBA. So it can come in the exam. So woman with BMI more than 40, she has the risk of endometrial cancer of 10 to 15% in her lifetime. 40% endometrial cancers which are diagnosed, they are directly related to the obesity. So 40% of endometrial cancer, they are directly related to the or attributable to the obesity. Now, what is the link of obesity and endometrial cancer? So there are the three factors which are more important. So one is hyperinsulinemia, another is estrogen excess, and third is inflammation. So you can see because of this obesity, there will be estrogen excess. Why estrogen excess? Because of this peripheral conversion of testosterone to estrogens. Okay, that is one thing. Another thing is because of hyperinsulinemia, it increases it also increases this peripheral conversion to the estrogen. That is another factor. And third factor, because of this hyperinsulinemia, it increases the inflammation and it gives rise to this pro-inflammatory mediators, different mediators, and which are also as an important risk factor for this endometrial cancer. So these are the three mechanisms by which obesity is responsible for endometrial cancer. So one is hyperinsulinemia, second one is estrogen excess, and third one is inflammation. So now how you are going to prevent this obesity driven endometrial cancer? So first thing is weight loss. So the obese woman who lose weight through dieting, they have shown to lower their serum estrogen and testosterone levels. Also, their insulin sensitivity increases and SHBG levels also increases. So this peripheral conversion becomes less. But current evidence suggests that this is applicable only when weight loss of at least 20 pounds. Okay, so when the weight loss of at least 20 pounds is achieved, then only this cancer is reduced, not up to that. Okay, not up till that it will reduce. So at least 20 pounds weight loss is required to decrease the risk of endometrial cancer. So what are the factors which are shown to prevent or decrease the risk of endometrial cancer? So one is 20 minutes of moderate intensity exercise 5 times per week. Okay. So this is 20 minutes of moderate intensity exercise, sufficiently intense to raise the heart rate, and it is 5 times per week. So it is the same recommendation which is made for breast cancer prevention. It is also applies to this endometrial cancer prevention also for obesity. So this regular physical activity reduces the risk of endometrial cancer by 20 to 30%, and even greater benefits for those who undertake higher intensity exercise for greater duration. So the more the duration and intensity of exercise, the larger is the benefit and larger is the reduction in the endometrial cancer. So regular with this 20 minutes of regular physical activity, there will be decrease in the endometrial cancer by 20 to 30%. Now, bariatric surgery. So bariatric surgery for whom it is advised? For morbidly obese women, so morbidly obese women mean BMI more than or equal to 40. So it is an effective mean to reduce endometrial cancer risk. And bariatric surgery, it reduces endometrial cancer risk by 70 to 80%. Okay, 70 to 80%. This is also a question which is in the strategy TOG SPA. Okay, so BMI more than 40, when you do the bariatric surgery, it decreases the endometrial cancer risk by 70 to 80%. And this effect is predominantly mediated to improvement in insulin sensitivity. So this is because of improvement in insulin sensitivity. Another thing is protective factors is LNGIUS or Mirena. So this use of Mirena is associated with 54% reduction in endometrial cancer. And if this treatment is prolonged, it decreases to also 75%. Okay, so 75% risk reduction for longer use of Mirena. That is another thing. And third thing is combined occipitals. Okay, so combined occipitals or COC exposure 5 or more years, it also decreases the endometrial cancer by 50%, and its protection remains up to 30 years post treatment. So when you use OC pills for at least 5 years, it decreases the endometrial cancer risk by 50%, and the protection remains for 30 years for post treatment. Now, how you're going to diagnose this endometrial cancer? So basically, endometrial cancer should be considered as potential underlying cause for persistent irregular bleeding or HMB when there are additional risk factors like PCO and type 2 diabetes. So obesity, PCO and type 2 diabetes, if this triad is present and the woman comes with irregular bleeding or HMB, she should be considered as a potential candidate for endometrial cancer. But this is not reflected in the NICE guideline. Okay, so premenopausal woman, so HMB premenopausal woman, according to NICE guideline, there is no provision for urgent referral for endometrial biopsy. So sometimes these patients can be missed. Now, when you think like sorry, when you have seen this endometrial cancer and when you want to see for the spread, or sometimes because of this sampling becomes difficult in case of obese woman, you can either go for higher investigations like CT scan or MRI. And actually the problem with MRI is the old MRI machines in UK, they can handle up to 125 kg. Okay, so the women who are weighing more than 125 kg, the MRI will not be done in those centers, and then you have to refer those patients to the tertiary care center. So for that thing, CT will be used. Okay, so for those patients, they use CT because they have to refer these patients to tertiary care center. So to avoid that, they use CT. But what happened with that is CT is only useful for excluding exploitrine disease, and it is not that sensitive as MRI in determining the depth of myometrial invasion and also for lymphadenopathy. So MRI is more sensitive for diagnosis of intrauterine depth. Okay, so intrauterine spread, depth of myometrial invasion and pelvic lymphadenopathy. For that thing, MRI is more sensitive than CT scan. Remember well that one thing. Okay, now what is the management? So as you know, early endometrial cancer management is TH or BSO. So not TH, it is total hysterectomy plus BSO, and the choice of route is laparoscopy. Correct? So this is the primary treatment for most endometrial cancer who are early stage. Now, this surgery can be challenging in obese women because of presence of other comorbidities like cardiovascular disease or obstructive sleep apnea, which reduces the anesthesia fitness. Also, there will be restricted surgical access because of obesity, increased risk of post-operative complications like wound infection if open surgery is required. So, this simple surgery also can be challenging in case of morbidly obese women. So an anesthetic review is often required to ensure that the woman will be able to tolerate that Trendelenburg position, because laparoscopy you will require this steep head low or Trendelenburg position, and to access the need for post-operative care in high dependency units. So for all this thing, fitness and post-operative care, anesthetic review is recommended pre-operatively. Now, whatever the route is used, either laparoscopy or laparotomy, they have found no difference in survival rate between laparoscopic hysterectomy and abdominal hysterectomy or open hysterectomy. But Right now, there is currently insufficient data to see the safest choice for surgical route in women where BMI is more than 50. Okay, because here the conversion rates are much more higher than women with lower BMI. So when the BMI is more than 50, the appropriate route of surgery, whether it is laparoscopy or it is laparotomy, it is not recommended. No route is recommended. It is because there are higher rates of convergence from laparoscopy to laparotomy. Now, in the management, again, what is the role of radiotherapy? So, adjuvant radiotherapy, it reduces the risk of pelvic recurrence in only intermediate and high risk women. Okay, so intermediate and high risk cases only adjuvant radiotherapy is required, and it is administered as vaginal brachytherapy. Okay, so it is administered as vaginal brachytherapy where the risk of lymph node metastasis is low. Also, primary radiotherapy can be given who are unfit for surgery and those are heavily bleeding. So for those primary radiotherapy, what is the modality is combined external beam radiotherapy plus intracavitary brachytherapy. So this is it is associated with best locoregional control and long-term outcomes. But again, with obesity, this all delivering this radiotherapy will also become a problematic thing. Like because of brachytherapy and all these things also become problematic thing in case of obesity. Chemotherapy in endometrial cancer, you know, there is no much role of chemotherapy in case of endometrial cancer. Adjuvant chemotherapy has no effect on survival in women with high risk disease, confined to uterus, and on overall survival also. Most morbidly obese women, they present with low grade early stage disease which do not require any adjuvant chemotherapy. But for high risk cases like intermediate or high risk disease, if they require chemotherapy, administering the chemotherapy also becomes challenging. Why? Because usually the formula used for chemotherapy is glomerular filtration rate, and carboplatin usually can result in inadequate doses because it depends upon the glomerular filtration rate. And in obese women, there will be underestimation of creatinine clearance because of large body surface area. So those can be underestimated in those patients and they may receive less dose. So giving chemotherapy, giving radiotherapy is challenging in case of obese woman. Also surgery is also challenging in case of morbidly obese woman. And all because of that. Another thing is conservative treatment. So conservative treatment in which patient it is recommended? One, the patient who have atypical hyperplasia and low-grade endometrioid cancer with minimal myometrial invasion, who are either medically unfit for surgery, who decline hysterectomy, or who desire to preserve fertility. So there the option is Mirena or oral progestogens. So this Mirena and progesterones, they have success rate of 50 to 65% for stage 1 low-grade cancer. But recurrence rate are as high as 25%. And the dose of medroxyprogesterone acetate required is 200 to 400 milligram. So which is way higher that we use for normal hypoplasia patients, correct? So normal hypoplasia patient, we use 20 to 40. Here it is 200 to 400 milligram daily dose in single or split doses, which is also associated with side effects like weight gain, headache, and increased risk of thromboembolism. And follow-up for this medical treatment or conservative treatment is endometrial biopsy every 3 months for first 1 year, then twice a year thereafter to check the disease resolution, progression, or recurrence. And once the family is completed, she should go for hysterectomy. So long-term outcomes for patients in obese patients with endometrial cancers. So as I told you, the delivery of chemotherapy is difficult, radiotherapy is difficult, surgery challenging. So because of all these things, endometrial cancer management is frequently suboptimal in obese women because of all this difficulty. So obesity adversely affects this prognosis because of this all difficulties. But when the obese woman, they do receive the standardized treatment. So when they receive correct complete dose of chemotherapy, or when the surgery is optimal, or if the radiotherapy is given in proper doses, then there is no difference in cancer specific survival rate between two groups. whether weight loss improves endometrial cancer specific survival. So after surgery or after treatment of endometrial cancer, if she goes for weight loss, whether it reduces the cancer specific survival, it is not known. But beside this cancer specific survival, the weight loss will improve overall survival because of it will also decrease the risk of death from other causes like cardiovascular causes. So finally, the overall survival will be increased with weight loss after cancer therapy also. But whether it is because of cancer specific death reduction or because of death reduction due to other diseases, it is not known. So this is about the endometrial cancer and obesity, this talk. The next talk we are going to discuss today is hormone replacement therapy following treatment of gynecological malignancies. This is also October 2019 talk. Now this talk is total numbers. Okay, so remember well, there is nothing that you should remember here except for these numbers. So remember, most cancer usually occur in postmenopausal women. Most gynecological cancer occurs in postmenopausal women, but still 30 to 40% of women with this cancer, they are premenopausal or perimenopausal. And management of gynecological cancers is usually involves surgery, chemotherapy, or radiotherapy. So all modalities are used in this gynecological malignancies. In younger women, whatever the treatment you use, it may induce menopause, correct? So whether you do hysterectomy, BSO, it will cause menopause. If you give radiotherapy, it will cause menopause. If you give gonadotoxic chemotherapy, it will cause menopause. So if this menopause is left untreated, the woman will experience all typical symptoms of estrogen deficiency. Also, they are at increased risk of osteoporosis and cardiovascular risk. So it is also associated with reduced quality and quantity of life. So for that, HRT is actually required to prevent the long-term sequelae also and immediate symptoms also. So now how is this HRT is safe in gynecological malignancies? So we will see one by one all gynecological malignancies. So first is endometrial cancer. So endometrial cancer, as we all know, mostly it will present early. Most of the time it will confine to the uterus only. And because of that, it is associated with 5-year survival rates as high as 80 to 90%. So remember well, in this talk, they have at least given 5-year survival of each cancers. Okay. So overall 5-year survival they have given in this talk for each cancer. So endometrial cancer, 5-year survival rate is 80 to 90%. And the patients which come or present with endometrial cancer, so 5% are under the age of 40 years and 20 to 25% are premenopausal. Again, it can come as a question. So you please remember the cancer and how many will present with premenopausal age group. So in endometrial cancer, 20 to 25% will present as a premenopausal patients. There are two different cancers, that is type 1 and type 2. Type 1 is estrogen dependent and occurs in majority of patients, while type 2 is estrogen independent. So now when we consider HRT for type 1 cancer, for stage 1 and 2, if there are no occult foci suspected, you can give unopposed estrogen if she has undergone hysterectomy, or else continuous combined HRT can be used. Okay, so for type 1 endometrial, so endometrial cancer, it is divided into two, type 1 and type 2. So for type 1, now we are saying stage 1 and 2, you can give either unopposed estrogen if she has undergone hysterectomy, or you can give continuous combined HRT. For stage 3 and stage 4, HRT should be avoided. Remember well. So for advanced disease, type 1 endometrial cancer, HRT should be avoided. Type 2 endometrial cancer, avoid HRT in all stages. Okay. So for type 2 cancer, type 2 endometrial cancer, avoid HRT in all cases, all stages. Now ovarian cancer is 6th most type of cancer in women. Epithelial cancers account for 95%. Germ cell tumors 5% and sex cord tumors 1.2%. Okay, most ovarian malignancies are in postmenopausal women, but 20 to 25% occur in younger women. This is also strategy SBA. So 20 to 25% of ovarian malignancies occur in premenopausal women. 5-year survival rate for ovarian cancer is around 46.2%. But so this overall survival they are given 46.2%, but 5-year survival rate for the woman under age of 40. Why? And it is more. Why? Because they will present with germ cell tumor or stage 1 disease or sex cord tumor. So all these patients, definitive surgery is available and their 5-year survival rate exceeds 90%. Okay. So remember, whenever you are prescribing HRT, so HRT should be avoided for germ cell tumor and sex cord cell tumors. So HRT should not be given for germ cell and sex cord cell. There is limited evidence for epithelial tumor. So also again, it is not recommended because of limited evidence in epithelial ovarian cancers, and avoid or use it very cautiously for borderline tumors. So avoid for all other cancers except borderline tumors. Okay, so use cautiously for borderline tumors and avoid all other cases. Now coming to cervical cancer, it is 13th most common cause of cancer in women in UK. The incidence of cervical cancer is highest in 25 to 29 years old. It can be also come as SBA, remember well. So incidence of cervical cancer is highest in 25 to 29 year old, and most of the cases are under 45. Overall 5-year survival rate is 67% for cervical cancer. Overall 5-year survival rate is 67%, but it depends upon the stage. So stage 1 disease have higher survival rate of 95.9%, while stage 4, the 5-year survival rate is only 5.3%. There are two main types, that is, one is squamous cell and another is adenocarcinoma. So squamous cell 70%, adenocarcinoma 25%. Remember well, this is also a TOG SBA. So squamous cell carcinoma incidence is 70%, adenocarcinoma incidence is 25%. And incidence of ovarian metastasis is higher in women for adenocarcinoma. So if these women has to undergo surgery, they will, mostly gynecologists will recommend BSO for adenocarcinoma. Okay, so adenocarcinoma for cervix, BSO is recommended. So now, whether you should give HRT for these cervical cancers or not. So yes, for squamous cell carcinoma, for stage 1 and 2, you can give. Okay, if she is hysterectomized, you can give unopposed or else continuous combined. That means if she has undergone radiotherapy, you can give continuous combined, or hysterectomized, you can give unopposed estrogen. For stage 3 and 4, you should avoid HRT or you should use it cautiously. So it is for squamous cell carcinoma of cervix, and for adenocarcinoma of cervix, avoid or use cautiously. Okay. Vaginal cancer, 3% of all gynecological malignancies. They mostly occur in postmenopausal, and most of the time they are squamous cell. Okay, because of HPV related VIN or vaginal intraepithelial neoplasia. These tumors are not estrogen dependent. So if HRT is required, you can give in vaginal cancers. Okay, vaginal squamous cell cancers. But avoid HRT for non-squamous cell cancers. So for vaginal cancers, you can give HRT for squamous cell, and for non-squamous cell, avoid HRT. Okay. So till now, what we have seen is for endometrial cancer, type 1 cancer, you can give HRT, either unopposed estrogen or continuous combined in case of stage 1 and 2. For type 1 endometrial cancer, avoid HRT in stage 3 and 4, and type 2 cancer, avoid all. Then ovarian cancer, almost avoid all except this thing, borderline tumor, you can use with caution. Third thing is cervical cancer. So cervical cancer for squamous cell carcinoma for stage 1 and 2, you can give as like endometrial cancer, but for stage 3 and 4, avoid or use cautiously. Even for adenocarcinoma, avoid or use cautiously. Vaginal cancers, yes, squamous cell cancers you can give. For other cancers, avoid. Vulval cancers, they account for 5% of all gynecological malignancies. Most common cancer, 85 to 90%, is squamous cell, and it is non-estrogen dependent. So you can give HRT, either systemic or topical. You can use in squamous cell cancer of vulva. So this is about the hormonal HRT. Now, what are the non-hormonal approaches for this management of menopausal symptoms in gynec malignancies? So vasomotor symptoms should be managed in the same way. So only for vasomotor symptoms, HRT is not the choice. So here you can, so women who have any other contraindications to HRT, you can use the drugs like venlafaxine, fluoxetine, paroxetine, citalopram, clonidine, and gabapentin. So you can use these medications for vasomotor symptoms, or you can use lifestyle modifications for vasomotor symptoms only. Complementary medicines, they should be avoided. They are not recommended, like isoflavins, black coach, or St. John wort. So these complementary medicines are avoided. CBT can be used to elevate low mood or anxiety. So for non-hormonal HRT, medical treatment you can give. Okay, so non-hormonal medications like venlafaxine, fluoxetine, paroxetine, citalopram, clonidine, and gabapentin. So these can be given for vasomotor symptoms only. Complementary HRT should be avoided. CBT can be used. Okay, so this is regarding the HRT in gynecological malignancies. So these two talks are very short, and this is mostly about the percentages only, all talks. So now we will go to the questions and answers. So first thing is, what is the lifetime risk of endometrial cancer for an obese woman for body mass index more than 40?
10 to 15% B.
Yes, it is 10 to 15%. Okay. Next, what is the impact of bariatric surgery on the risk of endometrial cancer for morbidly obese? Now I had told you, I think you should not forget till your exam. Yes,
70 to 80% D.
70 to 80, yes. Next, what is the proportion of epithelial ovarian cancers that are diagnosed who are not postmenopausal, or in other words, who are young? Yes, this is D. Okay, it is 20 to 25%. Oh, I have not given the answer for this. 20 to 25%. And what is the 5-year survival rate for cervical cancer? Overall 5-year survival rate for cervical cancer. Yes. It is not D. It is 67%. It is E. Okay. It is 67%. 5-year survival rate for cervical cancer is 67%. It is E. Squamous cell carcinoma accounts for what proportion of cervical cancers? For cervical cancer, it is only 70%. 25% carcinoma. Okay, so it is 70%. Answer is E again. Sorry, C. 70%, it is C. Okay, so this is regarding these two talks. Please, this is only for numbers. Please go through it once. And I think out of this 5 questions, at least they will ask 1 or 2 questions in your exam. Definitely be sure of that. Okay?
Definitely they can.
Huh? Yes?
Yes, ma'am, they ask every time about malignancy.
Yeah, that's why. So please remember, definitely you are going to get at least 2 questions in your exam from these percentage. So please do these 2 talks very clearly. Okay. Okay then. So now I think I will send you another link for this thing because in next 15 minutes we will do that. And I think we will do the recalls tomorrow. It is September 2016, no now?
Okay, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, ma'am. Yeah, sure, ma'am.
Yeah, we will do it tomorrow. Yeah. Okay then.
Ma'am, your class you had to take about revision, how to revise.
Today I will send you the link. We will do it in half an hour. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.